I left to escape the well-worn path. University, work, marriage, kids. I wanted to experience the extraordinary.
Gracias, señor.
De nada, vaya con Dios.
I told my parents I'd be back in a year, but I don't think I'm ever going back.
I read a book once that said the last freedom is to choose one's own way.
The hidden world? That's why you're here.
Let's go off into the jungle with a complete stranger.
You're a photographer, right? You take photos, they get you straight into National Geographic.
Okay, let's go.
This is the last frontier on Earth. The jungle shows us what we really are. Perfectly balanced. The problem is us. With the cancer, we deserve to disappear.
It's the only guy who knows where we are and what we're going to do, and he just walked away. Carl, stop!
You're such a letdown, I can't even believe it.
Tie yourself!
Don't leave me! I'm not leaving you, okay?
Kevin!
Hi, my name is Yossi Ghinsberg. So glad to be with you today to share some of the deepest Amazon survival secrets. And I hope you find them relevant as we gather here today, Sail Point, to redefine confidence. Well, the truth is I'm an accidental survival expert. I didn't get the training. I was never an extreme sport person. What drove me to the Amazon was a childhood dream. And despite my lack of experience, I survived against the most harsh environment possible, the most hostile, which is the Amazon jungle in the midst of a rainy season in the lowlands of Bolivia, in a place known as the Madidi. I was alone, bare to the bone. I had nothing. I had no knife, no gun, no fire, no provision, nothing whatsoever, and no experience of this environment. The rainy season proved to be one of the worst in a decade. Torrential rains, flash floods. This is the densest place on the planet. Jaguars were roaming around my head every night. Wild boars, all sorts of animals, deadly snakes. And yet, against all odds, I survived. My story in that part of the world is still considered a miracle. I've gained the respect of the local indigenous people, saying one of them would not survive in such harsh circumstances. When I went back home, I wrote a book about my experience. And the book became an instant bestseller, then translated into some 20 languages. The importance of that is that thousands of people from all over the world were driven to visit that part of the world, turning Rurrenabaque, which is a base of exploitation, of logging, of milling, of hunting. They've turned them totally into owners of restaurants, hotels, tour agencies, and Rurrenabaque and the entire area around it has turned into a national park. In 2017, my story became a Hollywood movie. And Daniel Radcliffe, maybe the most recognized face of our generation, Harry Potter, is playing me. How surreal life can be. However, how can I make this relevant to you today? As we redefine confidence, as we look at the new emerging world. Survival has become very topical. Confusion reigns. Every country, every industry was deeply affected by the world pandemic. And we need to reestablish not only our understanding of what confidence, but actually to look at our core values and beliefs if we want to survive and thrive in the new emerging world. What is survival? Well, my definition of survival is an extreme and palpable danger to the life of any organism. And my understanding of survival is that any organism in such circumstances will turn into a survival machine, will call on all its resources to hold on to their life. Well, actually that's quite trivial, isn't it? Well, not quite, because if we look at the classic definition of survival, which is pure Darwinism, we're talking about the survival of the fittest, which means not everybody will survive. Some will survive and others will perish. This is an old way of looking at things. I think it's time to re-examine Darwinism and look deep into the Amazon rainforest, because the Amazon rainforest is where the survival game is played like no other place on the planet. There's no greater competition for resources than in the densest place on planet Earth. And what if the deep secret of survival of the Amazon rainforest are totally counterintuitive? What if it's not about sharp tasks and twisted fingernails ready for the kill? What if it's not about dominating and controlling and destroying the competition? What if the game is totally different and we need to throw away everything we know about survival if we want to survive and thrive as individual, as family business, as organization, as corporation, as countries, as a planet? Let us start in the beginning. I was born in Israel. I grew up in the suburbs of Tel Aviv. My parents were Holocaust survivors, and their trauma was delivered to an entire generation. We that were born in Israel grew up with parents that were traumatized. They survived the hardest thing to imagine. And what they passed on to us is their view of the world, which was laced with their fear, which was actually seeking shelter and separation, seeing everybody else as enemies and dangerous to our existence. Stick together. Don't go exploring the world. This is where you belong, to this country, to this religion, to this tradition. Go and get a good education so you can be secured. Become a lawyer, better dentist, if you wish. But this wasn't appealing to me at all. I didn't want to be a dentist. My imagination was flared with adventure books that I've read. And I've decided at a very young age that I want to be something completely different. I want to be a world explorer. And at a young age, I found my purpose. I decided I'm going to do something that belongs in the adventure books that I read. I'm going to be an explorer of the great Amazon forest. I will make my way into the Amazon, deep in the forest where nobody set foot before. I will discover a tribe in the uncharted that was never explored to culture before. I will be the first one to discover the tribe, and this tribe will embrace me. They will take me in. I will become one of them. I will be trained as a warrior, as a hunter. Living with them naturally, I will fall in love with the daughter of the chief and marry her to be my wife. And in due time, I will become the leader of the tribe, living there in the midst of the rainforest. One day, I will discover a huge treasure, a lost city, riches of gold. And when the time comes, with my bounty and with my beautiful wife, I'll return to civilization and become famous worldwide. Well, a naive childhood dream, you may say. But only a dream has the power to take one off the well-trodden path. You see, this is an issue of survival as well, because survival for most of us means surviving the day-to-day, the mundane place we call the shelter of the comfort zone. Daring to leave the familiar, daring to venture onto the world and explore is actually the most important survival action one can take. Because survival is not based on repetition. The essence of survival is exploration of a new path. Our species may be dependent on that. Our life may be dependent on one person, and usually the rebel, the crazy one, that goes against the current, that does what nobody else dares to do. Our true survival means doing something different and new. Not listening to my parents, not listening to my teacher in school. I couldn't wait for the moment that the time will come and I could live and start my journey in the world. But it wasn't simple. It wasn't that easy. I had no money. My father was trying to tempt me, was saying, look, if you stay and you go to university, you'll pay for your tuition. I will buy you a car. You can work in my business that one day will be yours. Your mom is cooking for you and doing your laundry. Do the smart thing. If you're following your indulgence, my father say, 1 shekel you will not see from me. And 1 shekel I didn't see. I left first for Norway, where I worked for 4 months in construction. Then I flew all the way to Alaska and spent an entire season fishing. Then I flew to New York, where I loaded trucks for almost a year. I paid for my dream. Because for your dream, for your vision, you need to sacrifice. There's a common idea, a romantic one, that once you live and follow your heart and go with your dream, the entire universe is going to conspire and help you. Well, what I found from my own experience is that the opposite is the truth. The bigger the dream, the more obstacles life will put in your way. But when you understand that actually this is the law, you don't take it personally and just keep course. You just keep course despite the resistance. And in the end, life does yield and start cooperating with your dream. I arrived in South America and I started traveling, but I wasn't a traveler. I didn't come to tour the country. I was single focused on one thing: rainforest, Amazon, jungle exploration. From the jungles of Venezuela, I went down to Colombia, and from Colombia to Ecuador, and from Ecuador to Peru. It was only in Bolivia, in the streets of La Paz, that I finally met the man that led me to my great adventure. He was an Austrian geologist, and he was telling me about his next expedition. He was mentioning the Madidi, the great uncharted part of the Amazon in the lowlands of Bolivia. He said there's a tribe he wants to make contact with, and he was talking about riches of gold. Of course, when he invited me to join him, I didn't hesitate at all. At the time, in the same hostel where I was staying in La Paz, 2 of my friends were staying there. Friends I met on the road. One was a Swiss school teacher on a sabbatical, a gentle, very beautiful person, almost saintly. The other was quite different, was a strong, brawny alpinist, an American professional photographer, Kevin. Kevin and Marcus joined me on that adventure, and that's how the foursome was created. We left civilization, and after a few days hiking on a trail, we found ourselves in the uncharted Madidi. A month later, we were in deep trouble. We discovered, first of all, about ourselves, that maybe the most dangerous and scary thing is your own shadow. Maybe the most fearful thing is meeting the beast inside yourself. The jungle broke our masks. For the first time, we were naked and raw in this environment. We had to hack our way into the forest since there was no trail. When we tried to build a raft and use the river, the fight for leadership brought us almost to each other's throat. So there, deep, deep in the uncharted Amazon, we made a terrible, terrible decision. We decided to split. The group broke in two. Our guide, the Austrian geologist, with our friend Marcus, decided to hike back and try to cut their way all the way back to the last village. Kevin and I decided to stick to the raft on the river and much faster challenge the white water all the way to civilization. Both groups were not successful. Marcus and Carl were never seen again. The jungle took them, and till this very day, there's no clue on what happened to them. They perished, for sure. They were never seen again. Kevin and I held on to the raft only for 3 hours when we were suddenly sucked into a very narrow canyon. Rushed into the canyon, a huge rock protruding. Without any ability to control the raft, we hit the rock and were sprayed like debris into the current. The raft broke into pieces, all the equipment lost, and Kevin disappeared. For about half an hour, only my body without anything shielding me, I went through the entire canyon, falling down waterfall, gliding on rapids and rocks, and in a miraculous way, I was spat to the bank of the river. Not hurt, not injured, nothing broken. But right there on the bank, I realized, after a moment of awe, what a disaster had happened to me. I was alone on the bank of the river, left with nothing at all, no equipment and no companionship. I stayed there for 4 days with the hope that Kevin may appear. I was walking up the cliff and screaming, but there was no way he could hear me with the roars of the river underneath. After 4 days of waiting, I realized that I will never see Kevin again. And then a broken person, I started walking off the cliff into the forest and following the Tuichi River. After a few hours of hike in the forest, feeling there's no person in the world, there's no greater victim of cruel circumstances than myself, feeling so sorry for myself, when I suddenly see something yellow under my foot. As I look down, I see it's a fruit. When I pick it up, to my surprise, it's ripe. And I'm not hesitating for a second. I'm pushing that fruit into my mouth, and there is an explosion, because that fruit is so ripe that the sugar rushes into my brain, and for a moment, I'm dizzy and giddy, and I'm not sure what's going on. As I open my eyes, all energized, I look up, and I see that the tree above me is laden with that fruit. So I rush to the tree, and I jump on it, and I pull the vines, and I pull myself up the tree. And once I'm close to the fruit, hanging with my hand on the branch, I'm reaching all the way to pick the fruit, when I notice, wrapped around the branch, a snake is contracting. A green snake is snapping at me. At that very split second, there was no time for me to digest, to realize what's going on, or to choose what I should do. In awe, I watched myself like in a movie, like from the outside, and saw what my body was doing alone, without me. my hand just let go of the branch and I fell off the tree down to the rocky ground underneath me. But instead of falling and breaking my bones, I was like a feather. I was actually floating gently, slowly, allowing my body to align itself, to search for the right place to fall without hurting myself. Immediately my body turned, picked up a stick and rushed back to the tree. There in the tree, chasing the snake inside the canopy. Getting close to the snake, I hit it with the stick. The snake flew off the tree and I rushed after him to the ground, picked one rock and accurately killed the snake on the spot. I picked up the snake. With one finger, I pulled its skin off. I put the finger back in and pulled its gut off. Under the tree, I was holding the deadliest snake in the Amazon and putting my teeth into it. My entire body was throbbing with power. My mind was cool as ice. My emotions were balanced. My spirits were high. In fact, I never felt so good ever in my life. I was finally at home. How could it be? I mean, I was the biggest victim on planet Earth, and then a minute later, I was this fighting machine that fought the deadliest snake and ate it alive. How can it be? Well, actually, it's quite simple to explain. In real survival circumstances, what really happens is that all our faculties are called into action and get optimized. So our mental faculty is making efficient, accurate decision in a split of a second without any hesitation. Our physical faculty gives us the power of superheroes to back up that decision. Our emotion backs up the action with courage. There's no self-doubt, there's no confusion, and our spirits connect to the highest faith and belief to support our actions. All our faculties align themselves focused and clear on one purpose, all done to dear life. So actually what I'm saying is that to become a hero in extreme circumstances where survival is real and immediate is actually not a big deal. It's not true heroism because the circumstances create the hero. Everybody in such circumstances, every species become the fittest, the best, the utmost expert in survival because life is so dear. Every organism knows the secret. True heroism is actually to survive, not in extreme circumstances. True heroism is to survive in the mundane. A real hero is the day-to-day hero, because the day-to-day hero has to rise above nature. It's natural to be a hero in extreme circumstances, but it's unnatural to be a hero in the day-to-day life. The heroes are those who love the same spouse and raise children and wholesome families and support their elders. Those are the real heroes, the day-to-day hero. And how can you be a day-to-day hero? How can you rise above nature? Well, it begins with the understanding that there is no day-to-day, that there is no mundane. Every day is a miracle. Life should not be taken for granted. That's what energizes our spirits and makes us connect to every day, to every hour, to every minute, to every action. There is no mundane. 17 days by now, I'm alone in this forest. At this stage, my entire body is one open wound. There's no place that is not cut or scratched or opened or bruised. And thousands of mosquitoes and other bugs, some of them laying larvae under my skin. I was etching worms eating me from inside. I was so skinny, there was very little for me to find for food. A snail here and there, a rotten fruit, and from time to time an egg I stole from a nest, but there wasn't much. I didn't give up, day after day, from morning until it got dark. I was walking along the river. At night, I would make myself a camp, breaking palm fronds and covering myself and lying awake and scared under the palm fronds, hearing all the nocturnals coming to life. The jaguars. There was no morning where I didn't see the marks of a jaguar or the feces of a jaguar around me. I couldn't sleep, not even for one night. But that day, that 17th day, after all that I went through, the torrential rains and the flash floods, the worst thing possible happened to me. As I was walking, I suddenly hear a noise and realizing it's an airplane. At that very moment I understood that airplane is searching for me. And I started running and screaming, but the airplane came fast. And it was too high, deep in the clouds. And it was obvious that it is passing without noticing, not searching, oblivious to my pain, oblivious to that surge of hope. This was too much to bear. As the airplane passed, I fell down on my knees and I started crying. Then I fell with my face in the mud. Something inside of me snapped. I didn't want to survive anymore. In fact, I really wanted to die because I knew my only rest will be in death. So I prayed from the bottom of my soul. I prayed to God not to spare my life, not to save me, but to just let me die. At that very moment, something quite impossible happened. As I was crying, I heard another cry, and it seemed there was a young woman nearby crying. So I stopped my tears for a minute, and I got up on my feet, and I started searching, and sure enough, behind the bush, scared, frightened, a young native girl, obviously lost and injured herself. Trying to relax her, I got closer and told her, it's going to be all right. They started searching for us. It's going to be all right. I'm going to take care of you. Don't be afraid of me. And I explained to her that we cannot waste any time, that we have to get back on our feet and walk quickly towards the river, because if the airplane comes back, we may still make it to the river. We can be saved. With that hope, again, I took her by the hand and I started walking with her, encouraging her, pushing her, pleading with her, begging her, promising her, just keep on, everything is going to be all right. As the night came, I found myself making a place for two people, for me and her. So I broke more palm fronds to cover both of us. And then I told her, come closer to me. Don't be afraid. I just want to hug you. We will take warmth from each other's bodies. Come closer. And then as I embraced her, suddenly a shock went through my body. There was nobody there. There was nobody there. Have I lost my mind? I'm alone. There is no girl. And yet, this girl saved my life and taught me one of the deepest secrets of survival in the Amazon. She saved my life because at that moment, I couldn't take care of myself anymore. I was helpless. I wanted to die. Saving myself wasn't enough. I couldn't do it anymore. But the moment she appeared, her life was more important to me than my own life. For her life, it was worth to sacrifice. For her life, I got back on my feet. The greatest secret of survival is following a higher purpose. It is only when we align ourselves with a purpose that is greater than ourselves that we discover our true power. Tenfold, 100-fold, 1,000-fold greater is our power when we give it away, when we follow a higher purpose. The following day, I suddenly sunk into a swamp. The thick mud swallowed me up to my chest in minutes. I couldn't pull myself out. The only thing I could do is swim inch by inch, hoping to reach the edge of that swamp and pull myself out. It took hours of fighting the swamp. And when I finally was lying on the edge of that swamp, I was so exhausted that I couldn't bring myself back on my feet. Realizing death was very near, because there under the canopy, I stood no chance. I understood that I had to do one last effort before I collapsed like that. I have to make it to the riverbank. At least there, I stand a chance of being discovered by another searching plane. I cannot stay under the canopy. And yet, I just couldn't move. From the corner of my eyes, I noticed something. There was a tree that seemed to be swaying. When I looked at it, the entire tree was red and moving. I immediately recognized it. This was the infamous Palo Santo, the tree that lives symbiotically with the red fire ants. One bite from such ant makes an old man cry like a baby. The pain is like someone extinguishing a cigarette on your neck. It was too much to bear. But at this moment, I knew exactly what I had to do. I started crawling straight towards that tree. And when I reached it, I pulled myself against its trunk and shook it until I covered myself from head to toes with fire ants. My entire body was covered as I turned into a human torch. I was set on flame. The pain was so big. I was screaming with pain. And then I was running. I was running on clouds of pain. There was so much pain that I couldn't feel my feet at all. Running until I made it to the riverbank. It was pain that saved my life. And that's yet another great secret of survival in the Amazon. So many times at life, we do everything in our possibility just to avoid pain. We're afraid of pain. We're trying to protect ourselves from pain. And yet pain is an ally. There's no growth without pain. At times, when we're stuck in the mud, and the real mud that we're stuck in life is the shallow, murky mud of the comfort zone, the place that doesn't allow us to grow and expand. In such time, a shock to the system, like a shower of red ants, is what we needed. Don't see pain as your enemy. See it as a friend. We cannot avoid pain in life, but we can avoid suffering. I was burning in pain, but there was no suffering. I saved my life with the pain. Suffering is different than pain, because suffering is actually not accepting pain. Trying to avoid it and resisting pain is what causes suffering. Reaching the bank of the river, I felt like falling, but I knew I had to do one more thing before I collapsed. because if I faint or collapse, an airplane may pass and not see my body. One more effort is needed. I have to mark the playa clearly, and I've decided to create my initial Y on the opening. So I rolled logs and rolled rocks, creating that initial. And once I move one rock, I uncover behind it a big turtle. Moment I'm seeing that turtle contracts into its shell, I pick up a rock and about to smash the turtle and rip its flesh, tear it to bits, devour it. As I'm about to do it, something quite unexpected happened. The turtle pushed its head and looked straight into my eyes. His eyes were so human. A shiver went through my entire body. I looked at the eye of the turtle and I could hear him speak. He said, "Brother, don't kill me. I want to live." I burst into tears. Of course, I wouldn't kill you. You are my brother. How could I think that? I apologized to the turtle in tears and watched him slowly leaving the scene. How could it be? What have I done? I'm starving. I haven't eaten in days, anything. Why would I let the turtle go? What just happened? I was totally confused. And yet, that turtle has taught me and can teach all of us the greatest, deepest, and most meaningful secret of survival in the Amazon. The turtle is my brother. And the turtle deserves to live. What we know about survival is lacking the most important element, understanding that survival means the survival of all of us. In an ecosystem, life has dependency. We are all one family, related. We are all connected, and we are all dependent on each other. The game of win-lose is a sign of the past. As humanity, if we want to walk towards new horizons, we have to internalize that it's about all of us. What COVID taught us is that separation is an illusion. Borders cannot hold the virus. No matter what our race or religion, we are vulnerable to the virus. When economies fall, we are all affected. When we realize we are all related, compassion is born. We all have to survive. We all have to win in this game. This is the deepest and most meaningful secret of survival. It's about all of us. The following day, I heard a strange noise. In the beginning, I thought it's a wasp or a bee, and trying to rid of it. But then the noise got stronger, and when I raised my head, down on the river, I saw a dugout canoe landing. And before I understood what's going on, two people jumped out of the canoe, turned it, and pushed it back into the current. I was about 100 yards from the river, hiding from a flash flood. It was too late. I tried to get up on my feet. By the time I got on my feet, the boat was already downriver, about to disappear behind the curve. No voice came out of my mouth. I was just watching desperately as the dugout disappears downriver, when suddenly someone at the boat turns her head and saw me. And the scream came, "Yossi, don't move!" It was Kevin. That crew on the boat, the owner of the boat that brought Kevin, together with 2 hunters from the Chupiamona tribe, hunters that found Kevin and came back with him to search for me. All of us realized a miracle happened. They landed and turned the boat after 3 days of search exactly in the spot where I collapsed a night before. My life was saved by a miracle. And once you go through a miracle, you are transformed forever, because you know the world cannot be explained anymore. The Cartesian Newtonian equation, the clockwork, it doesn't work anymore once you experience a miracle. Don't ever give up on life, because miracles do happen. Life will not give up on you. 10 years later, I came back to the Amazon. Back on the river, I went up to visit the Chupiamona people. This tribe, deep in the Madidi, the only tribe in the Madidi, people responsible for saving Kevin's life and my own life. When I met them, they told me it's their lives that need saving. The youth is leaving the village and never coming back. There's no romance in being a noble savage anymore. Poor and isolated, the youth is seeking a better future. When the youth is leaving, the entire village is dying. So the elders came up with an idea. They wanted to build a resort, a lodge that will retain the youth. They will build a resort and be responsible for everything, cooking and guiding and running the boats up and down the river. It was a naive dream, but never underestimate the power of a naive dream. I decided to join them, and I stayed with them on the bank of the same river that almost claimed my life. I stayed with them for 3 entire years, and we have built Chalalan, a world-famous resort, still operating, and completely changed the destiny of this tribe. But also, my own destiny was changed. My youth story was finally concluded. I found my tribe in the midst of the uncharted Amazon. I joined them and became one of them. I was initiated as a warrior and a hunter. And you know what? I fell in love and got married in the middle of the Amazon in a shamanic ritual. She wasn't the daughter of the chief. She was a Jewish princess that came all the way from Jerusalem. Nevertheless, we got married in the middle of the Amazon. And the treasure, I also found the treasure. I found my bounty. This story and the ability to share my story with you and with millions of people around the world, it's the greatest treasure I could ask for. A true treasure is something you give, not something you take. As we conclude this talk about understanding survival, I'd like to leave with you the essence of it all. It's about daring to do something new and different. In this time, we cannot just follow the footsteps of our ancestors. Thank you, SailPoint, for hosting me with you today. As we defined confidence, we had to look at our belief system and our core values and revisit them and realize that our understanding of survival is dated. The Darwinian paradigm of only few survive while the rest perish is obviously doesn't work. In fact, it almost brought us to our brink. We learned from COVID that separation is an illusion and that we depend upon each other. People and markets, we're all part of one big family, living on one planet. If we want to survive, we have to make sure we all survive. And the Amazon can teach us how we can survive without competing. And this is the final secret of surviving in the Amazon. Competition is not efficient. There's too much effort and not enough yield when we spend our resources or competition. The Amazon teaches us a better way. Innovation is what every species does according to their inclination and their relative advantage. Through that innovation, which is evolutionary innovation, every species carves a niche, and in that niche creates a monopoly. A monopoly is the opposite of competition. There's less effort and greater yield when you operate in a monopoly. That secret is relevant for each one of us. Not trying to compete with anybody, but actually explore what's special about us. It's true for the individual, and it's true for the organization or the corporation. By being different, we actually energize the ecosystem instead of competing and degrading markets and degrading society, taking the habitat of other species and actually doing the opposite of what we need to do. In a world abundant and rich, survival means surviving together. Thank you so much, CellPoint, for having me today with Redefined Confidence.